We go. I love that American lady. Right, hello and welcome everybody. My name is Sarah Parker. I'm for the Dorset Coast Forum and I will be hosting this evening. I'm very, very pleased that we've been joined by colleagues from the Marine Management Organisation. They will be sharing their presentation, but tonight we have Jess and also Rachel Louise. So Jess is the Head of Marine Conservation at the MMO and Rachel is the Principal Marine Conservation Officer. I'm still admitting people as we go. Just a quick reminder, if you are not familiar with the project, the Studland Bay Marine Partnership, I support them as a project officer. It's been one of the things I've really enjoyed in recent years. And the mission statement is there on the screen for you. It's about partnership working and managing that wonderful space that is Studland Bay that we all love. And just a quick reminder for you as well, this is the map of the area that we'll be talking about this evening in parts, but the Studland Bay Marine Partnership manage the eco moorings. There's 87 of them now in that bay. And hopefully some of the story that you'll hear tonight will give you a different view of what is happening with this wonderful project all about seagrass and the wonderful seahorses. Thank you so very much for joining us. It is unprecedented for us to have so many on a cold-ish November evening. So I'm going to hand over. Rachel will be doing the slides, so hopefully the tech will work. If you have got any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. I will keep an eye on that. And also at the end, there'll be a Q&A opportunity. So feel free. And Rachel, I will hand over to you. If you can remain on mute, if you're not talking, that would be super. It just helps with the bandwidth. Thanks, Rachel. Over to you.
Thank you. I'm not overly familiar with Zoom and I've now lost the sight of everybody, but can you see the slides? Can you say yes?
We can see the slides. Everything is fine. Fear not.
Perfect. Well, welcome. I will hand straight to Jess, who's going to start us off.
Thanks, Rachel. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our presentation from the Marine Management Organisation. Or if you can go
going without me,
jumping around. We're going to talk about Studland's ocean meadows and the science beneath the surface. And we've been introduced, so I don't need to do that part. So, but who are the Marine Management Organisation? So we are the MMO. We're a public body that sit underneath the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, also known as DEFRA. The MMO was created in 2009 to manage England's marine environment, and we cover a range of services, including marine planning, marine licensing, fisheries and conservation. And one of our key responsibilities is protecting marine protected areas, otherwise known as MPAs.
So if the slides jump, I'm not sure why they're jumping. So there we go. It keeps jumping forward once. I'm not quite sure what's going on. So please bear with. So our team's work centres around MPAs and managing any activities that may compromise the health and habitats of the species within them. So what are MPAs? Our seas have a variety of marine life and habitats, many of which are rare and of national importance. MPAs are areas of the ocean which give legal protection to these habitats and species and are essential for healthy functioning marine ecosystems. You can see on the map the amazing array of 181 designated MPAs within English waters. So MPA is an umbrella term which includes marine conservation zones, special areas of conservation and special protection areas. And without going into too much detail on the 3 different types, they protect different species and habitats under different legislations. Also, as part of the Environmental Improvement Plan, the government has committed to improving the condition of MPAs by managing certain activities. This includes the management of fishing activities and of marine non-licensable activities, or MNLA, which are activities that people do in the sea which don't require a permission or a license to take place. It broadly covers recreational activities which are happening in the sea. So the MMO have responsibilities along with other regulators to further the conservation objectives of these MPAs. Let's see if it goes one slide at a time. It's not going to do any slides now, is it? There we go.
Thanks, Rachel. So what are marine non-licensable activities? They are those which do not require a marine licence, as defined by Section 66 of the Marine and Coastal Access Act, and they also excludes all types of fishing. But it does include recreational activities such as non-motorised watercraft, for example, kayaks, windsurfing, kite surfing and dinghies, powerboating or sailing with an engine, anchoring and mooring, launching and recovery and participation. Sailing without an engine, anchoring and mooring, launching and recovery and participation, and diving and snorkeling. There are many foreshore activities which already fall into the remit of existing regulators, and the MMO does not propose adding further layers of management unnecessarily, and as such considers the following activities outside of scope due to existing regulatory presence. And that's things like walking, including dog walking, which is managed by the local authority or landowner, motorised and non-motorised land craft, which again is managed by the local authority and landowner, general beach recreation, wildlife watching from the land, coast steering, and bait collection. Bait collection is managed by the IFCAs as it's a sea fisheries resource.
There we go. So the wider working of the MMO and the Marine Conservation Team on the MLA project, as we call it. So our plan and our method going forward is that we work as collaboratively as possible with other agencies, and this is to support the management measures that we may implement, and also collaboratively to ensure that any evidence we gather furthers the conservation objectives of these MPAs. So we quite often work with harbour authorities, with regional MPA networks, with the IFCAs, with the MCA or the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, a lot with Natural England to sort of gain and further the information that we have and the evidence that supports our work, with the Wildlife Trust, and with environmental non-government organisations as well. So that's ENGOs. But we really couldn't do what we do without a collaborative approach. It's very key to moving our project forward.
So our MLA programme was launched with Studland Bay, and this demonstrates the different stages that we will go through. So on the screen are the steps. We start the progress by working with local residents, visitors and others to better understand the site and whether recreational activities are interacting with the designated features, such as the seagrass in Studland. And if needed, management measures will then be proposed and selected on the basis of the most effective way to further the site's conservation objectives. In terms of management options, MMO can explore many different management approaches, such as information campaigns, voluntary measures such as Studland Bay, voluntary no anchor zone, codes of conducts or bylaws to ensure the protection of the features of the site.
So on to the specifics of Studland Bay. So as you may be aware, Studland Bay MCZ or Marine Conservation Zone was designated in May 2019. The designated features are seagrass beds, long-snouted seahorse, subtidal sand and intertidal coarse sediment. As Studland Bay is an MCZ, MMO has a duty to ensure that these designated features are protected through management. And under the Marine and Coastal Access Act 2009, MMO have powers to manage marine non-licensable activities in MPAs, such as Studland Bay MCZ. So the MMO has statutory duty under MACA to assess whether the conservation objectives of protected areas are being hindered by activities taking place. And those conservation objectives are set by Natural England for inshore sites, inshore of 12 nautical miles, and they describe the target condition for each marine protected area. So MMO has the ability to introduce some management where it's required in order to achieve these conservation objectives.
This map shows the locations of the designated features of Studland Bay MCZ. Designated features are ecologically important habitats or species which are legally protected by the designation of the site as a marine protected area. The intertidal coarse sediment is shown by the small orange area, very small orange area in South Beach. It is primarily located in a small area along the upper shore at South Beach, and this sediment is ecologically important, supporting a wide variety of species such as algae, crabs, lobsters, worms, and sea stars. The subtidal sand is shown by the yellow area, and it is found throughout the site. Where conditions allow, subtidal sand supports seagrass beds, and the sand features also support species such as ungulate rays, pipefish, wrasse, and juvenile commercially important fish. The seagrass feature is shown by the red dotted polygons. It is mostly concentrated in the southwest corner of the bay, extending from South Beach out towards Old Harry's Rock. And seagrass grows in shallowed, sheltered conditions, which is why it's found in this area. As shown on the map, some areas are established seagrass beds, whereas other areas are where the historical records of seagrass exist, but no established beds are there at present. Long-snouted seahorses inhabit the seagrass feature, and Studland Bay is a known breeding location for this species. Please note the exact location of seahorse records are not displayed on this map due to the sensitivities of this data. But long-snouted seahorses are protected species under the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981. And where seahorses are present, the seagrass is also a protected feature as a place of shelter for the seahorses. Natural England is the MMO statutory advisor for marine protected areas between 0 to 12 nautical miles, and they provide the MMO with information on the conservation objectives of sites, which describe the target condition for each of the designated features. For Studland Bay MCZ, the conservation objectives are that the designated features are maintained in favourable condition if they are already in favourable condition, or that they are brought into favourable condition if they are not in favourable condition. Natural England advised that the conservation objectives were not being met for Studland Bay MCZ, and therefore the seagrass was in unfavourable condition. MMO therefore had to decide on management to further the conservation objectives of the MCZ and improve the conditions of the feature.
So why did we determine that management was needed for anchoring? So Studland Bay is a highly visited area, including many recreational boat users who anchor within the bay. It's an MCZ, so MMO has a duty to ensure these designated features are protected through management under MACA. For example, in Studland, targets are to recover characteristics such as seagrass extent, its distribution, and its health, as well as recover the population sizes of the long-snouted seahorse. So seagrass delivers lots of fantastic benefits to us, which we may often not notice. So it's a really important nursery habitat for important fish stocks. It helps absorb wave energy in coastal storms. It stabilizes sediment to prevent coastal erosion. It stores carbon, and it forms parts of habitats and landscapes that we do all enjoy. So to enable the seagrass to provide all of these essential benefits and services to us, the seagrass needs to be in good health. There are a huge amount of pressure on seagrass from sea level rise, ocean acidification, increased storminess, ocean temperature rising, urban and rural runoff, and damage from recreation. So the images on the right-hand side, I had to figure out my lefts and rights there a little bit, are from a dive survey that was conducted by Natural England. And as you can see, the potential impacts from a single anchoring event at the top, where an anchor may not have been set with care, has been scraped, has scraped the seabed and has removed seagrass. So MMO managing the impacts of potential damage from recreational boating is really, really important to ensure that we can all continue to enjoy and benefit from seagrass present. Other agencies are managing a number of other pressures onto the seagrass as well.
To manage anchoring activity within Studland Bay MCZ, a voluntary inner anchor zone was introduced in 2 phases over 2021 and 2022 in the sensitive areas of seagrass. Why was a voluntary approach used? Well, this approach allows the users of Studland Bay to take ownership of the issues and work collaboratively with the MMO and each other in order to protect them. The stakeholders voted unanimously really for a voluntary measure rather than a statutory bylaw. The decision then was taken to introduce the voluntary approach following the consultation and engagement with stakeholders, and this allowed for a collaborative approach to managing the area. We used a phased approach as we also received a lot of feedback during the engagement events about this in terms of people wanting time for alternatives to anchor and also a period for raising awareness about the measure. Phase 1 is the interim voluntary no anchor zone introduced on the 17th of December 2021. And phase 2 is the voluntary no anchor zone, which commenced on the 1st of June 2022 and extends the interim VNAS to protect a larger area of seagrass habitat. Boat users are asked not to anchor in the zoned area to protect the designated habitats and species which are sensitive to damage from anchoring.
So throughout the process, we have taken on board and considered feedback and used it to shape our approach. So we took forward voluntary measure rather than statutory measures, as Jess has just said, and this allows a participatory approach to management, and it allows users of the bay to work collaboratively with Dorset Coastal Forum, with MMO, with Natural Trust, with each other. We work closely with Studland Bay Marine Partnership when requested. We sit on the comms working group and we have regular catch-ups with Dorset Coastal Forum. In response to stakeholder feedback, we planned a phased approach, and this was for the introduction of the voluntary no anchor zone. We have been very clear that safety does come first, regardless of any measures in place, and have fed into the recent Dorset Pleasure Boat bylaw. Following stakeholder feedback, we adjusted the VNAS boundary to remove the shoreline area of South Beach where there is no seagrass. We've carried out engagement visits to local clubs and marinas with MMO staff engaging with boaters and raising awareness of the measure and providing information on topics such as evidence and monitoring as well. We continue to raise awareness through various channels, developing digital content and leaflets, including coastal colleagues with the Southern IFCA engaging on water with users as well. We have engaged with navigation apps to request that they show the VNAS on navigational charts, and we've recently fed into the marine licensing exemptions consultation regarding advanced mooring systems and marker buoys around sensitive marine features.
The MMO has monitored activity levels. Oh, just checking I'm not on mute. In Studland Bay since the measures and monitored the effectiveness of the voluntary measure. This includes MMO site visits from our coastal team, monitoring the adherence and awareness raising. And this is increased during busy periods where possible. And through this monitoring, the MMO aim to understand how the voluntary measure is working and collect further data on activity levels. Natural England is responsible for the reporting on the condition of the species and habitats in the MCZ, and Natural England work with partners to carry out monitoring and assess the condition of site features. A survey of the extent and densities of the seagrass bed in Studland was carried out by the Environment Agency in 2018, and the survey will be repeated hopefully next year as well in 2026. And Natural England conducted a dive survey, I think in 2021, and reported back on the results of that, which helped form the baseline of the evidence base for Studland Bay MCZ. As the MMO, we have held stakeholder surveys in the autumn of 2022, 2023 and 2024, following the end of the boating season, which help us to understand the awareness of the VNAS and the adherence to the voluntary no anchor zone. This survey has led to written reviews of the voluntary no anchor zone in the same years, which summarise all activity, including any ecological and survey data that we have received and been updated on from Natural England. And we use all the data gathered to inform the management measure and the effectiveness of it and whether any alterations are required to the measure.
So we continue to work with Studland Bay Marine Partnership, and we do love working with Sarah. So we are members of Studland Bay Marine Partnership subgroups. So we sit on the research and monitoring group, the comms group, and we have regular catch-ups. We have supported and in the accessing of funding applications such as FAS and EMFF. We do engagement events with Studland Bay Marine Partnership where we can. We are fully dispersed across England, so sometimes it's not always easy for me in Newcastle to come down to Studland, but yeah. We have updated our websites, and we've dedicated sections on the partnership with yearly review, safety at sea and marine licensing guidance. We have worked with Studland to put features in Dorset View and All at Sea. We've published some blogs, we've done some e-leaflets, which includes a lot of information about the partnership, and we've also done social media adverts as well, and social media posts promoting VNAS as well. And I think on the next slide, we've got some examples of some of the harbour guides, adverts that have been placed, just highlighting the VNAS from about 2021 onwards. And the aim is to just engage the right people in the right places, and give as much information as possible, also with the ability for people to find out more if they want. And it's just all done in partnership with Studland Bay Marine Partnership, and yeah.
So in November 2023, MMO held 3 community workshops bringing together people who live, work and visit Studland Bay to share their knowledge, experiences and values associated with the bay. This natural capital approach to policy and decision making considers the value of natural environment for people and the economy. 46 people attended, including local residents, local business owners, beach hut owners and members of the following organisations. So the National Trust, Natural England, Dorset Wildlife Trust, Studland Bay Marine Partnership and Dorset Council. Whilst the events were not designed to change the management measures, they did successfully highlight the diverse social and cultural values associated with Studland Bay, helping to demonstrate the value of the natural capital approach. And I'll tell you in a minute about some of the key themes that emerged. But I particularly like this infographic. I always find it funny that there's a person running from the naturist beach wording. It just creates funny images in my head. The importance of nature was something that really rang loud with the Studland Bay community. The rich biodiversity, the wildlife and geological features were highlighted, emphasising their significance in the local ecosystem, their educational opportunities and the importance of protection and conservation. Health and well-being was another really important factor. The connection between the environment and the health and well-being of the community was a reoccurring theme, and that emphasised the positive impact of the natural surroundings in Studland Bay. Many participants described the ways in which they took part in active leisure or work-based pursuits in this area and how the specific features of the environment enabled this activity, contributing to their physical and mental well-being. The community and social space was really important, and Studland Bay emerged as a significant social space, fostering a sense of community and shared experiences amongst residents and visitors alike. Many shared fond memories of time spent with family and friends, and there was a number of historic memories as well that were shared about the area. Connecting with nature was also really important. So the event explored ways in which individuals connect with and appreciate the unique and wild natural beauty of the bay. So in addition to the variety of landscapes and wildlife, participants described the ever-changing, diverse and colourful features of the land and seascapes as being a key contributor to their deep connections with nature.
I really like my dad once caught a lobster at South Beach with his bare hands, because I feel like that is a proper core childhood memory.
Yeah.
So we also wanted to include a little bit about myth busting in the presentation as well. So I know it's a very, very text heavy slide, but I've put a few myths up there, and have then sort of put responses in. So many people believe that anchoring on seagrass has a pruning effect. and will help seagrass grow faster, and that seagrass can also replant itself after a storm. However, seagrass recovery can be extremely slow. It can take years, even decades, to fully recover. Anchors and storms may uproot the rhizomes, leaving bare sand, which seagrass then struggles to recolonize, and it doesn't replant itself when it goes out on the tide. Seagrass conditions should have fully recovered from anchoring damage soon after the VNAS was put in place. And if it hasn't, then anchoring wasn't the problem, is another myth, unfortunately. The recovery of seagrass really isn't linear, and it can take, as I said, years to fully recover from the damage. And this is because of a wide range of factors, which can increase the sensitivity of the seagrass itself. Even a careful lift of an anchor can cause scouring, or dragging, and most damage happens when anchored as the boat swings and it moves with the wind or the tide, and the anchor chain just drags along the seabed as well. Onto sort of the second column, recreational boats can cause significant cumulative damage. Hundreds of small anchors across a popular bay can create anchor scars, which are visible from satellite images. And the frequency and density of anchoring also matters, not just the size of the boat. Seagrass meadows are a foundation species. They stabilize the sediments, they store carbon, which is important for climate change, and they provide nursery habitats for other species. So lots of things that Jess and I have covered off in the presentation. But once they are broken or damaged, they are much less resilient to things like storms or temperature stresses, and even small losses can cause really big ecosystem changes. So the MMO, Marine Non-Licensable Activities project, is looking at recreational activities where they are having an adverse effect on the condition of the features of the MPA. So it's not just about seagrass. We will also be looking at activities such as kite surfing and bird foraging areas, and commercial wildlife operators which are disturbed by wildlife. So the management of the VNAS and the associated costs are really, really complicated. No one is making bucket loads of money off it. The implementation of the VNAS has been expensive. It can be very, very expensive. And the MMO have supported Studland Bay Marine Partnership through fast funding, because costs and maintenance and licensing are very, very expensive things to sort of navigate through, especially when importing things from the States, for example, because they're the only people that make the right roads. So there are many other areas that are looking to Studland. So it's very important, and we should definitely bother. So Studland's a massive success story in terms of the implementation of the VNAS on a huge scale. So Dorset Coast Forum, MMO, and Studland Bay are quite often sharing some amazing lessons learned from Studland, and are regularly in discussion with other organisations from Scotland to Cornwall to find out just how it's worked. And knowledge sharing really is key to have this level of success anywhere else. Over to you, Jess.
Thanks. So what's next for us in the MMO with regards to Studland? Well, there's definitely more science going to be happening. We are pleased to say we have a master's student starting in the spring who will be looking at the perceptions of management measures in Studland Bay. We will be repeating the VNAS survey, which we've done on an annual basis since the management measures. And we will also be looking at some more face-to-face boater interviews to gather their perceptions of the management measures, as well as another regional workshop in the area to look at the community's views on the measures. We are also currently bidding for funding for a seagrass survey, which will involve Natural England diving on the seagrass, which they did in 2021, and it'll be a bit of a follow-up of that work, and sort of hoping to gather some evidence on the effectiveness of the management measures so far, and whether there are signs of recovery of the seagrass. And there is also going to be a repeat of the EA subtidal seagrass study, as I mentioned earlier. So that one again helps to look at the extent and the density and condition of the seagrass bed in Studland. There is also continuous learning to be had from this project, and we're really pleased to remain connected with Studland Bay Marine Partnership and everyone involved in the project. We really do promote this as best practice. I think it's been a huge achievement, although we're still learning a huge number of lessons from the work that Studland Bay Marine Partnership are doing to protect Studland. But we really hope that that learning feeds into the wider rollout of the Marine Non-Licensable Activities project. We want to encourage policy development within DEFRA, really influencing change with regards to pressure removal policies and restoration and marine conservation policy development. But collaboration is the key, and we hope to continue our efforts on that. And we like to thank everyone who continues to support this project. If you've discussed it, if you've championed it, if you've backed it, including the local businesses, the On-Water Champions and Studland Bay Marine Partnership members and supporters. We hope to continue working with you to support Studland Bay and the learnings from it, and use this as an example of what can be achieved for pressure removal and marine conservation, and the brilliant outcomes that I'm sure we're all going to hear about from the evidence that will come in the next few years. Thank you.
Marvellous. Thank you so much, Jess and Rachel Louisa, for that. That was really very interesting. We do have 44 people who might want to ask questions. Doug's already off the mark and has put one in the chat. So I'll come to that in a minute, Doug. You can use there's a reactions button at the very bottom. You can stick your hand up and I will attempt to keep an eye on people. But Doug, we will go with yours. Do you want to unmute, Doug, and ask the question instead of me reading it out, which is always boring? Thank you.
Yes. Well, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. No, I'm concerned that we're talking about local issues, and there's more significant things going on that affect our coastline, like super trawlers going past the Isle of Wight quite regularly and our coastline. I've seen them. My son-in-law said, "Is that an island out there, Doug?" Their nets are the size of 6 football fields, and that must affect the biodiversity nearby and the biorichness of the seas near us. And the fact that they're called marine protected areas, they're not. They're just paper marine protected areas.
Thanks for your comment, Doug. I'm sure you're aware, or hopefully you've seen, the stage 3 MPA fisheries management consultation has recently closed. The feedback from that is being analysed and assessed at the moment, and that will then be brought together in terms of our evidence and data on the stage 3 sites. However, it still won't lead to management of the super trawlers in these instances, because these are pelagic fishers, so they fish in the midwater and they don't cause any damage to the bottom trawling. So the pelagic fisheries is managed really via quota management and things like that. And so as long as the catch does not exceed the quota, that is what is agreed, and that is agreed with Europe as well on a regular basis.
Yeah, and that's the problem. We all know that that's rubbish, and we're just giving away fish. We have taken thousands, millions of tons of fish, which are affecting. They may be pelagic, but they affect everything. Their offspring and everything around them will affect every coast, and we should be stopping that. And I would expect you to feed information like that back to your bosses.
We will be. Yeah, we do have a number of comments on super trawlers, and yeah, it does always get fed through to the fisheries regulators.
Thanks, Doug, for that question. Really interesting one. Catherine in the chat has asked, can you provide any details of current outcome assessments of state of seagrass and inhabitants with implemented measures?
So the reason we're requesting funding for further surveys on the seagrass for 2026 is because we don't currently have a up-to-date assessment of the state of the seagrass. As you're aware from our presentation, the seagrass will take a while to recover. We are hopeful that there are some signs of recovery, and I know Ken Collins and Neil and others who dive in the bay have seen some signs of recovery. But unfortunately, at the moment, we don't have the concrete evidence to sort of support that in terms of from Natural England. So that's why we really want these surveys done. However, we're not sure really what the outcome will be at this stage. We are hopeful that it's moving in the right direction, but we don't think that the condition will be favourable as it needs to be for you know, the seagrass and the seahorses. So we're just hopeful that there will be an improvement, and it shows that we're on the right track in terms of the management measures and the pressure removal that's in place at the moment, and that things will continue to improve.
Lovely, thank you. Alison has put an excellent question in the chat. Interconnectivity of seagrass beds is important, especially for species that lack mobility. What is the plan to extend what you've learnt creating MPAs covering beds adjacent to Studland?
So as part of the Marine Non-Licensable Activities project, we will be looking at managing any marine protected area with seagrass in it, but also any marine protected area with features that are impacted by marine recreation. So we will be looking at the interconnectedness of all habitats and species really in terms of this management. So that's definitely something we'll be considering as this project develops. It's not an easy task. We have about 50 sites, and Studland, as you're aware, was challenging enough. But I think, you know, we do have some different approaches, some you know, renewed enthusiasm really for the work as well, and hopefully you know, we'll be grabbing a few more of the stage 3 team to move over to our side of the things so that we can start to roll out on the MNLA project. And yeah, we will be looking at all MPAs with features that are being impacted by marine recreation. So that will be happening.
Excellent, thank you. Alison's just added a follow-up. Alison, do you want to unmute and ask your question? I always feel like I'm
Oh, hello.
talking.
No,
There you go. Go on, Alison. A different voice from me. This MPA question, I think, is an interesting one. Do you want to go ahead, Alison? Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, what if the areas that have got seagrass in them aren't MPAs? I mean, obviously, I was thinking, you know, there's obviously the ones in Poole Harbour and all that kind of stuff that are currently just, well, I think they're just anchor sensitive zones, for example. And I think I've read somewhere that the seahorses from Studland potentially migrate there during the winter months. So I was just wondering, wouldn't it make sense to cover those as an MPA as well?
So our complications with that at the moment is that if the feature isn't a if the habitat or species isn't a feature of the MPA or a supporting feature of the MPA, so it might be that it's a supporting feature for the birds in the SPA in Poole Harbour. But unless it isn't a feature, we're unable to protect it under our statutory powers, which is unfortunate. However, there is currently a review of marine protected areas that DEFRA are leading on, and we're not sure what the outcomes of that might be, but it may be that other features and habitats and species are added into the MPAs in certain areas. So we are keeping a close eye on the work that's being undertaken with that at the moment, and looking at yeah, what that might lead to in terms of changes within our MPAs. But where it's, yeah, with Poole Harbour, so if the seagrass is a supporting feature of the SPA, so a supporting feature of the birds, we will be able to protect that and do have our powers, you know, within our remit to do that. I'm going to let Rachel answer some questions in a minute, sorry.
Thank you. I can see Neil's just popped in the chat. Neil, do you want to unmute? Because we're talking seahorses, we might as well cover that. We're good on the time about the evidence of seahorses in Poole Harbour. We're very delighted that Neil has joined us. So very honoured that he's here. An absolute pivotal person at the very heart of everything that's happening at Studland. Thanks, Neil, for joining us. So, do you want to talk seahorses for Alison and the rest of us?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. It's great to hear everything that's going on, actually, and thanks to Jess and everybody for tonight. Yeah, there's a lot of myths about seahorses in Studland Bay, and one of the myths is that they migrate into Poole Harbour in the winter. That's actually not true. The population in Poole Harbour tends to stay in Poole Harbour. Seahorses are a relatively lazy species, really. They won't migrate if they don't have to. So within Poole Harbour, where it's relatively protected. They stay there all year round. The ones in Studland Bay tend to migrate down into Pool Bay and migrate back up. And we've got one particular individual called Big Black. He's a huge male seahorse. He's about 22 centimeters from top of the head to the end of the tail. We've seen him 3 years in a row now, and he migrates off in the winter and comes back every year. The proud dad of thousands and thousands of babies. But one of the fantastic things about this that has been, it's really heartening, to be honest. As Jess alluded to, it's not been an easy project for everybody involved. And what is fantastic is that every single dive we do now, we actually see seahorses. And we went for one period of 2.5 years where we didn't have a single seahorse. So it just shows that the eco moorings and the voluntary no anchor zone is actually working. There is evidence of seagrass recovering in the anchor scars, and it is migrating north slightly. So all round it's a fantastic project. But I'm sure Sarah would be the first to say it's not been easy, and we've all been stressed about it at different times. Let's put it that way. And so yeah, it's good to see it happening, and fantastic to see it's happening, to be honest.
Excellent. Thanks, Neil. And I'm going to uncover David Brown, who's the chair of the Studland Bay Marine Partnership. He's doing my job by answering stuff in the chat. David, do you want to just unmute and show yourself? Because we've been asked some questions about patrolling. We might as well cover that off quickly for people who might be new to the project. Patrolling and the eco moorings not being in the bay at this moment in time. David, are you there?
Yeah, I am here. Can you hear me?
There you go. Okay. Should we start with the patrols
I was
first?
trying to be incognito, but there were so many questions I could answer.
I know, and you're fast on your little typey fingers. Right, okay, should we start with patrol boats and then move on to payment and then just about the eco moorings not being in the bay at this moment in time?
Yeah, I suppose just to clarify, obviously, what Jess has been going through from the MMO's perspective is kind of what they're doing, and we're kind of two halves of the same process, really. So a lot of the stuff that's happening on the ground now is being sort of driven by the Studland Bay Marine Partnership, which is a whole load of organisations working sort of in a primarily in a voluntary capacity. So we are, in addition to anything the MMO might be doing, we're kind of trying to make this work from a local point of view. So in terms of patrolling, there's been a huge program of engagement off the water for a start. So people like Sarah, but many others talking to boat users in their sailing clubs, or the point where they leave on their way to Studland, and getting messaging out in all sorts of ways to increase compliance. And then as from this year, we've worked with Studland Motorsports, who are a company based at Knoll Beach, who do kayak hire, that sort of thing. But they've been going out doing on the water engagement, and they can see in real time who's using the moorings and who's paying for the moorings. So they go out, and not in a kind of policing way, but in a very kind of positive engagement way, telling people about the project, about the seahorses, about the seagrass, and that's really driven an uptick in compliance. So we do have the stat. We did a lot of monitoring of boats this year. We've had 92% of boats in the bay now this year from June to September have been compliant, and by compliant they've been either mooring on an eco mooring, or they've been anchoring outside the no anchor zone, which is, I think all of us who've been involved in this project for a few years would have bitten your hand off if you'd offered us that sort of 3 or 4 years ago. It's been an incredible turnaround in behaviour, and although, as I've said, the kind of impact on the seagrass, we've got to wait for that evidence to be really definitive. All of the signs now, I mean, particularly the seahorses this year, but also the stuff that Ken Collins has been doing in the seagrass it is coming back. We can see it coming back, and all of the metrics are showing it's coming back. So it's great. And sorry, just final point of that, the question around the moorings coming in, we do bring the moorings in winter. We bring most of them in winter. That's just a practical thing, because they need maintenance. They're very expensive to put in. They're very expensive to maintain, and they don't get so much use in winter, whereas the winter when they get more damage in the sea. So we bring it's all but 6 this year. We brought in the winter they're being maintained now. The idea is to keep some provision in there over the winter, so that people who do, there are still some available, and occasionally, as it sounds from that message in the chat, maybe we haven't left enough in, but hopefully for most use through the winter there's enough there.
Thank you. Thanks, David. I've just bobbed in the chat again. I've done it once. I've done it again now. I've put a little link to MMO info to do with Studland. In terms of frequently asked questions or up-to-date info, events that we're doing, please go to the website for Studland Bay Marine Partnership. I have also popped that in the chat. Chris has asked a question that we do get often asked, Chris. And I'm going to lay this open to both Jess and Rachel Louise and David too. Are there any plans to make the VNAS mandatory?
Rachel's just messaged me privately and said, that one's for you, Jess.
Okay. I can tell you what I usually tell people, but I'll let
Go
you
on then.
do the
No,
MMA.
let's see if we align.
Well, often I'm talking to boaters or the Studland Bay Marine Partnership guys. We go out, as David said, we go to marinas, sailing clubs in the spring. We'll be doing that again. To the guys from the steering group, Jim and Howard, they're both sailors. They went over to the Isle of Wight, to the De Parkstone again. We do go around the pool area as far as Christchurch. We really try and reach out. And this year, our tactic was to make it quite clear that this is working in partnership. If people decide they are going to anchor in what is a voluntary no anchor zone, and they just say, right, it's voluntary, that is what it is. But if they don't use the eco moorings that are being provided at high cost, which we do have to cover, as David's explained, then their enjoyment of being able to recreationally use that bay is put at risk, because if we cannot bring the money in from the additional money that we get from different places or donations, but definitely if we don't get the money in from the mooring fees, which are equivalent to car parking charges, then it becomes a very expensive operation. And I think, David, we're trying to be quite clear with people about that and open, as we have been throughout the whole time that I've worked on it, very transparent with people about that. If we cannot cover the cost, we can't put it out. If we can't put them out, there is a risk that it would not be voluntary anymore. And that, I put it in those simple terms to people, and choose what you will. But that's my northern way of saying it. Maybe the MMO might say it in a nicer way.
I don't know if I'll say it in a nicer way, but I think while we're achieving 92% compliance,
brilliant,
we're doing really well. However, that compliance does come at a cost. And at the moment, that cost is to Studland Bay Marine Partnership for the advanced mooring systems. So we do need to see the increased level of support to pay for those advanced mooring systems when people are using them. Otherwise, they won't be able to be maintained. They won't be able to be put out. And that will, again, put that area of seagrass and the features of the seahorses at risk. And if there was a drop in compliance or adherence to that measure, we would consider putting a statutory measure in, such as a bylaw. That's not to say that we won't consider that anyway. We are rolling out the Marine Non-Licensable Activity Project wider. We are gathering as much evidence as we can on the pressures to the features of various marine protected areas. And one we're looking at wider is the impact of anchoring on seagrass. And the evidence for this is developing year on year. So if there is new and increased evidence about the pressures from anchoring to seagrass, if there is a wider steer from the general public, from conservation bodies, that anchoring should not be occurring on seagrass at all, then we may look to put in a national bylaw on anchoring on seagrass. So that could be one way that we deliver that management measure. So what I'm really saying is, I am not saying never. I'm saying if it is needed on a case-by-case basis or at a national level, we will consider using our statutory powers to put a bylaw in place. However, I think with a bylaw or with a voluntary measure, behaviour change takes a few years to achieve. And I think 3 to 4 years is the kind of standard for anything. It takes a while to communicate those messages. It takes a while to educate people as to why there's a change in the activities they're normally allowed to do. And it takes a while to get that buy-in and that consensus with everybody who's using that area to support, you know, a change, really, because change is not easy. It's never easily accepted, but it has happened, you know, reasonably fast in Studland Bay. I think it's been, you know, on average about 4 years since the communications sort of started and the VNAS was put in place. So I think it's really, really important to recognise the benefits that we're now starting to see from the management measures, and also to celebrate it. And yeah, I'm really confident about Studland and its future. And you know, there's still conversations to be had. It might be a case that we may need to change the location of the VNAS. As the seagrass expands, we might need to expand the VNAS. So there may be, you know, different ways we can look to managing Studland. So I'm open to those conversations. We're an evidence-based organisation, and we will, you know, look into that evidence and also conduct stakeholder engagement where we can to re-look at what is required in each situation. However, as we do have 50 others to get around, we might be a little bit restricted as to you know, what we can do on each site. So yeah, do bear with us for a while.
Thanks, Jess. I think you've touched on something that is really, really important. There is no doubt in my mind that the peer-to-peer share of information, this year we've had more people talking to more people independently, or who came along to our On the Water Ambassadors workshop that we had online in April. I know that we've got members of the public and companies. I think is Dan from For Adventure. Are you still in the room? I'm sort of bobbing between the. I know Dan attended the last talk we did with Ken. Dr. Ken Collins from the University of Southampton, who really set us all alight on wanting to do more. And I talk to people who say, oh, my husband goes out on his stand-up paddleboard and chats to people. Studland Water Sports have been extraordinary. The team there have really, really done such a good job of, in a non-judgmental way, telling the story of Studland and letting people know that we have to do this together. The community have been fantastic, the local companies. I cannot tell you how much that peer-to-peer share, and for every one of you who's here who's fairly new to this, just tell somebody else, because they then tell somebody else and it just gets wider, and it is a step change. In my time, I think 4 years I've spent supporting the partnership, it is extraordinarily different from how it was 4 years ago. And it's brilliant when we see videos of the seagrass growing. I'm going on now, and there's things in the chat. Shut up. Excuse me, sorry. You can tell I'm really into it all. Right, okay, Dan is here. Dan, do you want to just tell people what you and your team do? Because I know you take people out on tours and stuff, and they are talking about what's beneath the surface. And because you can't see it, sometimes people don't quite get it. Dan, do you want to share that quickly? Can you come off mute?
Yeah, sure. No problems at all. So one of the things that we do is when we're taking people out on the water is we talk about what's happening with the Studland Bay Marine Partnership. We talk about the voluntary no anchor zone. We talk about the seahorses, and we share as much as we can within our small team as possible. Sometimes we're so lucky that we actually get to float literally over the top of the meadows and, you know, look down into them, see the crabs, see the fish. So yeah, it's a really amazing experience for people, and that's what we do.
Excellent, thanks, Dan. And it does make a real difference. We've had some questions about counting. We do have, and thank you so much. We've got one of the boat counters. So there is a system where there is a webcam. We do look at the boats and we count them. Organised with National Trust volunteers, which is great and was a very popular, people put themselves forward for that. One of the boat counters is just asking about the accuracy, and I know University of Southampton, David, do you know more than I do on this? I think that we are looking at a way of making it more accurate, but
I think at the moment they're still doing both methods because AI is kind of new. But I think there is some automated learning in machine learning in counting them and working out where they are. But there's people like the person in the chat there who's doing physical counting as well, which is really invaluable to. So I think it is fairly robust data. It's not for the entire season, but I think we're pretty confident in the data we've got. That 92% figure for the sample period we've got, which is pretty extensive because it's both systems.
Okay, excellent. Dan has just asked, can we access the webcam to see the bay? I would think the answer to that might be no, because we don't want people
protection things. No, there's also we can't, because we have to, before we give the images to people to count, we have to blot out anything that might be recognizable, I'm afraid.
Yes,
because of data.
We're not trying to name names of the boat, they are literally counting them and where
Sarah,
they are.
before we finish, can I just come into filling up one of the points earlier, because it follows on from some of the stuff we were saying around I guess the question around will it become mandatory, and no, because if we get all this compliance, that's great, and we are getting really good compliance. Because I chair the partnership, it's kind of, this is very present in my mind. We've got to stress it's working. People are complying because there's an alternative, the eco moorings. The eco moorings cost a lot of money, not just to get in, but to maintain. So just to give people an idea of it, it costs our basic budget for just the absolute minimum for bringing them in, maintaining them, insuring them, putting them out again is about £60,000 a year. But when you add on top of that, we're also paying people we're still needing to pay people to do outreach and engagement and stuff. There's things like website to maintain. There's the monitoring we do as part of this. Our budget as a partnership is nearer 100,000 a year. People are paying for using the moorings, but it's generating about £20,000 a year. So at the moment, the entire future of this compliance is dependent on us as a voluntary group bringing in about £80,000 of additional money on top of the moorings fees. So your myth buster about no one's making money out of this, I would absolutely like to reinforce that, because at the moment it's being underwritten by the National Trust and we're losing money on this. We cannot afford to do this long term. So it is in everybody's interest to not only make sure that everybody going there pays to do so. So we've got 92% of compliance with the bay, but only about 35% of people using the moorings are paying for the privilege. We need to get that up, and that's part of anybody who's on this calls, to talk to people, to say this is not us making money. This is them keeping the option open for the future. But we're also desperate for people who want to help with us to get, corporate partnerships. We've had some really good corporate partners who are starting to fund this project. We think there's future in that, but it's nobody's responsibility. This, we all need to get to find ways to fund it, because if you lose the eco moorings, if we can't afford to put them out again, this whole thing just collapses right back down. And that's, we've got to avoid that.
It does. That's very true. And should give a quick shout out. Knoll House Hotel will be having a £1 donation on their menu, so everyone needs to go there locally and eat there, please, and do your £1, because the Pig on the Beach were fantastic and raised quite a lot of money for that, as well as other wonderful donors. Right, I am always very strict on this 8 o'clock thing, and it is 1 minute past. So if you've got any more questions, put them in the chat, because I will make sure if there's any we've missed, I will cover them. We've recorded this. It will go on YouTube. I will share with you a link to when I put it onto the webpage. I would like to say a huge thank you to both Jess and Rachel, Louisa, for spending the time on a November evening, and for you joining us. The MMO have been exceptionally helpful to me in my role, as has so many organisations, and I thank them very, very much. This is at its heart partnership working, and it's delightful that we had 46 people on a Wednesday night in November. So that's marvellous. So thank you very much, guys. I'll very quickly on screen just make sure that that is the webpage to go to. Studland Bay Marine Partnership. It sits on the Dorset Coast Forum web pages at this moment in time. The YouTube is Dorset Coast Forum 4847. And I am going to stop sharing that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Neil, for coming. That was great to contribute as well. And David, very much. And thank you so much. Please look out. You're all on my mailing list now. So I'll let you know when we have our next research monitoring group meeting, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And I'm going to switch the American lady off if I can. Stop recording.
Thanks.